Okay, so it's now time to start setting up some of the buttons. One of the things I have done first is given the buttons a test remotely, check that the kit worked. Now it does, I'm going to start putting it into the CNC marked out section. So the first thing I'm going to do is sketch up, mark up for our two joysticks, actually get some marks on so I can screw them in quite easily. So in order to do that, let's just run lines that are roughly centre through these. So now we have a mark to work to, although it's a little awkward to see on camera. Now, in order to set it up, apart from an extra project, I'm just going to put it on like this. That way we can get this nice and square. And then I had, in fact, made a little jig for this. He says trying to remember where he's put it. But one of the things I did do to centre these up was to print out a jig. Excuse me 1 second. Perfect. So one of the things I did was I printed a little jig, and what that's going to allow me to do is hold the jig in, hold the button in, get it to the point where it's roughly square, and then mark it up. Again, another really useful 3D print, just pushes into the hole, joystick drops on top, square it up with our lines, and then luckily with this, the final squaring I can actually do once the screws are in place. So we've got 4 marks now. Let's just in the centre of each of these large marks. Okay, and let's dust off that into the bin. So now we should be able to start. What I'm going to try to do is build it in situ, and the reason for that is to keep most of this connected, as I know this works. All I'm going to do is remove the USB lead, pinch that in, just because that's kind of the longest and most awkward wire, and as with all wires, it instantly becomes tangled. Right. So that's my USB out of the way. So if I was going for this to be player 1, I've got my 2 remote buttons. These 2 are going to be probably L1 and R1. Oh, actually no, they're going to be start and select, and they're going to be on this front panel. And then I have my joystick over here and my buttons over here. I've got out an old SNES controller, so actually what I can do is I can wire this up so it matches a classic SNES. So I'm going to do that. Let's turn this over, prop it up slightly, and start working our way through. So if we're going through with the SNES, we know that it's going to be that way around. Quick check as always. So that's going to be green, yellow, blue, red. So while remembering that, let's get green. And because these buttons are momentary buttons, it doesn't matter which way around they go in. So test our fit. That fits quite nicely actually. Find our 2 wires within here, untangle them, and let's place them back on. Ooh, slightly tight. Yellow once again, find our 2 wires, swing them through, keep them neat. And what we'll do now is we'll just pause it and put the rest in. And now for a really quick bit of wire copying, working out where each one of these buttons goes. As with all projects like this, the next stage is to check as we go along. So at the moment I've got a copy of Raspberry Pi set up on this. So it's a little RetroPie touchscreen. It was part of the handheld project, but I know it's a version that's working at the moment. So let's remove U for confusion. Okay, RetroPie is booting up. Let's work these out. So now what we've got is we've got controller 1 and controller number 2. Perfect. So let's put in first controller. Emulation station booting up. Hold button A button to configure. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this layout. So A. Okay. I'm not entirely sure what was on this, but let's just have a quick look. Check it boots up and check we've got some playing. Now that the joysticks have been tested, now that we know they work, I've quickly installed them into the cabinet, and the next stage will be to attach them up to the Raspberry Pi monitor and actually see if we can get a trial version of this cabinet running.